Good evening, everybody. I had a thought before starting, or maybe it could be a good start with Nour Hifaoui, because since we are we are equally gendered here, so for this panel. Anyway, so the first time I met Nour, I read her name Nour Fakhouri, and the second time it was Nour Hifaoui Fakhouri, and the third time now I read Nour Hifaoui. Hifaoui means from Haifa. So I don't know with Nour, when we talk about here the panel of legalities and people who are, I don't know, staying in a country that is not theirs, even if they were born in that country, etc. She's of course has a very famous, for me, right, comics called Blue, Carte Bleue, or Blue Card, etc., which is the card of Palestinian refugees who don't have nationality, but they have this special card, etc. So maybe I can start with Nour to ask her about her situation, for example, her legal situation and how she can deal with it, how he dealt with it, right? From the, no, I'm not, or I want to hide my identity, to now I am Hifaoui. Please, if you can say something about it.
Okay. So first, actually I first identified myself as Nour Hifaoui, and I grew up as Nour Hifaoui, but like 4 years ago I got the Lebanese nationality and I became Nour Fakhouri, since Hifaoui was just a la'ab given to my family since they moved from Haifa to Yafa, so they were called the Hifaouiyya. And it stayed here till they came back to Lebanon, and it was my family name. But when I got the Lebanese nationality, I became Fakhouri, and I didn't really understand someone's calling someone. Okay. I couldn't really accept it in a way, though my whole family became Fakhouri. My brother, my sister, and my parents always used to present themselves as with Fakhouri, and I tried really hard to explain to my mom that you can't introduce yourself as you get Fakhouri while I'm Nour Hifaoui. And now, and I grew up in a family. My dad was raised in Lebanon. He was born in Lebanon, and though he couldn't get the nationality unless in a not very political correct way, and he couldn't give it to us. So after years I got it, and I couldn't really see the difference now. You know, yeah, I have the pink card, as I describe in my bachelor's project. The project was called Blue Card because I had the blue card. And it always made me feel a bit different since I have a blue card and all my friends at school had the pink card. And I was raised in a family in which I had to hide my identity. Since I was living in a very Christian Lebanese community, and none of my friends were aware that I was Palestinian till a very older age. Let's say I was 16, the first time someone heard me saying that I was Palestinian because of stuff about university papers, and they were shocked. And ever since, I decided to really just accept it and assume it and live it, though I don't really see the difference between Lebanese and Palestinian, with all my respect to everyone. I was raised here, I know the history of Lebanon. So with this Lebanese nationality, really nothing changed to me. Just maybe I don't have like a laissez-passer now. I have like a real passport. That's it.
So you are adjusted only legally. It doesn't matter about you. We are proud that you are Lebanese now.
Doesn't really make a difference.
To be before, yeah. Anyway. So with the other situation was Mr. Pak, who is South Korean, living in France, working comics related to Middle Eastern let's say, issues like Haytham, right? The Haytham, before it also you worked on Yalla Bai with Joseph Saifuddin about the war in 2006. What struck me, and of course before it also, you did two with Joseph, right? Yeah. About Monsieur Coucou. It's also about about a Lebanese guy who his father was assassinated for political reasons. He left. He renegade his Lebanese origin. He built up a new life in France, right? And the mother of his wife has cancer, terminally ill, etc. She begged him to go back to Beirut to get her a remedy from the mountain. And at the same time, his family was trying always to contact him, to come back, to solve some issues, etc. And he used to refuse that. So he went to Lebanon, and there, while he was there, he reconnected with his Lebanese origin, because in France he changed his name, everything. And at the same time, his belle-mère, mother-in-law, died, and the last scene was him, right, saying the Quran on the grave of his father. So reconnect with the identity. So how, and looking at of course, looking at the books, what is striking is that the first time I saw them, really I was a little bit amazed by how he could capture the Middle Eastern, let's say the Syrian or the Lebanese or whatever features, the souks, not only the features, also the architecture, etc. and so on. Can you tell us a little bit about all this mixed up things and how you came up with your visual identity, let's say?
Est-ce que je peux répondre en français?
Ah oui.
Okay.
J'essaierai de traduire.
Alors, là, en fait, en Corée, les pays du Moyen-Orient sont assez mal connus, assez peu connus, et il y a beaucoup de malcompréhension sur ce pays, je crois. Donc, je crois que je suis une des premières personnes qui s'intéresse à ces régions-là. Et en fait, quand je regarde les journaux français, il y a des malcompréhensions sur mon pays. Oui, voilà. Donc, forcément, les informations que j'ai à travers des journaux français seront différentes de la réalité. Et donc, je voudrais connaître la vraie situation d'un pays à travers la bouche des gens qui viennent de ce pays-là.
So he came from South Korea. Of course, in Korea, knowing about the Middle East or our culture, etc., is almost inexistent. So it's just when he moved to France that through the French newspapers, the French media, etc., that he has this knowledge that is also given through the eye of the French media, etc. And then he wanted really to know himself how the situation is in the Middle East.
Il y a encore d'autres raisons, mais est-ce que je peux parler un peu plus?
Oui.
Parce qu'en fait, quand j'étais gamin, je pratiquais la calligraphie chinoise à 21h. Et donc, mon père m'a appris ça. Il est très traditionnaliste. Mais bizarrement, au moment où je commence la calligraphie, mon père a allumé la télé pour regarder le journal télévisé. Voilà. Donc, après quelque chose, on commence souvent à parler de la guerre civile au Liban, OLP, phalangistes et tout ça, quoi. Et donc, j'ai été exposé à cette information durant plusieurs années. En fait, la guerre civile du Liban a duré 15 ans. Ouais. Donc, j'ai été exposé à cette information très, très longtemps. Et donc, je me suis dit que, qu'est-ce qui s'est passé là-bas, quoi? Qu'est-ce qui s'est passé là-bas? Et dans mon entourage, il y avait personne qui pouvait m'expliquer correctement. C'est déjà assez long pour vous?
Oui. So, When he was young, he was fond with the Chinese calligraphy, and he used to do some Chinese calligraphy. And when he went to France as a young kid, so in the news, of course, Lebanon was one of the major news in the French medias, etc., because of the civil war that happened to
Pardon, mais
stay
je parle de journaux télévisés coréens quand j'étais gamin.
Korean.
Oui, journaux télévisés coréens parlaient de la guerre civile libanaise.
Ah, les Coréens parlaient de la guerre
Oui,
civile.
oui,
Ah,
voilà, oui.
before going to France. Okay, so he, because it was one of the major news, and because it lasted for a long time, 15 years, so that's how he got this contact, let's say, or this knowledge about the Middle East and mainly about Lebanon until you met with Joseph and you did the Yalla Bye, right? No. Okay, but let's say these are things that are related to, I don't know, identity, to whatever issues maybe that you are not accustomed to as a South Korean, excuse me. So where is the, how can I put it, the problems that you might face in a country that has almost no legality during the 2006 when you came, right? And if you want to go back to our legal and whatever,
Désolé,
etc.
je ne crois pas avoir bien compris votre question, je suis désolé.
Je veux un peu reconnecter avec le thème, n'est-ce pas, de notre truc. Tout ça, ça a de rapport avec les identités, comment tu t'es intéressé au Moyen-Orient, etc. et tout ça. Mais pour parler d'une certaine légalité, tu as travaillé deux fois, disons, une fois sur la guerre de 2006, une autre sur, disons, Haytham, l'histoire de Haytham. Et dans les deux cas, il y avait d'un côté un pays presque sans gouvernement, sans légalité, et dans le second, avec Haytham, tu as travaillé, si tu veux, sur tout le trajet, n'est-ce pas, du père de Haytham et sa famille en France, les problèmes de légalité qu'ils ont eus, d'intégration, etc. et tout ça. Donc, si on peut un peu parler de ce côté-là, l'intégration de Haytham dans la société.
En fait, Haytham, il est très travailleur. Il est le fils de professeur de mathématiques. Et donc, il est arrivé en 2012 et 3 ans après, je crois que 3 ans après, il a réussi son bac brillamment, enfin, avec une très très bonne note. Et puis, il poursuit ses études de mathématiques à l'Université de Paris. Et voilà, je pense que, en fait, l'image qu'on voulait passer, c'est de montrer que le sort réservé pour les immigrés, enfin pour les réfugiés comme ça, pour les immigrants, pour les migrants, n'est pas que les tragédies. N'est pas que les tragédies. Et puis, on croit souvent que les Syriens sont potentiellement des terroristes. Mais on oublie souvent que c'était à cause de la révolte. Ça commençait par la révolte contre les dictateurs. Donc, voilà, donc on voudrait passer un message, moi et nous trois auteurs, on voudrait passer un message optimiste. Voilà, sur cette...
So Haytham's story is, I think, one or the unique success story of integration of an immigrant from the Syrian war into France. So the main or the aim of the book for the three parties who worked on it, there's the father, the main, right, the character who is one of the opposition, right, to the regime, who fled Syria to France, and then his kid and his family followed him, and they wanted to show to what extent the integration of or the image of the immigrant is not always a bad image. They are not terrorists. They can, and it is a real story, by the way. It's not a fiction, right? And so this guy, he went to a country that he doesn't know the language, so he learned the language, he succeeded, and he was one of the successful student, even in French things. So that's one of the success stories that of integration for the immigrants, etc. طيب يزن كمان يزن يلي كاتب وصحافي ومش رسام ولكن كمان فتت على عالم بفتكر الان جي او الان جي اوز اكسترا وله علاقه سو اذا بتحكي شوي عن تجربتك.
Sure. To give you a bit of an idea, مين أنا I'll speak in English to make it مين أنا. I always ask this question. I don't even have an answer, which touches on who's the audience, because I don't know what my voice is, so I tend to just write what I find interesting and hope everyone fits. So Anna, my background is that I was born in Kuwait. So I was already born in an environment that is completely different from my roots. My parents are both Syrian. And the experience of refugeehood, politics, news is always part of our lives, to the point where living in Kuwait in the 80s and 90s, the first Gulf War happened, so we found ourselves trapped outside of the country. We went back to Syria, and then we left Syria after the Gulf War. That whole experience with the Gulf War made my parents decide that we should get a Canadian passport. And as part of another journey I experienced, so I experienced the nature of immigration to a completely different environment from Kuwait or Syria. And then coming back to doing my education in Canada, and then studying a bit of international law in London. And then I found myself in journalism. Just to make a story short, it's because I couldn't find a job. And journalism is great to work in when you're unemployed.
You don't have.
Yeah, so I was in journalism for a while, and a lot of the work I would do especially had to deal with, obviously, politics and pop culture in our region. And the story of refugeehood, I find, is very essential to the DNA of our storytelling in the region, I mean. So I wrote a lot on that, and a lot of my research work would be involved in that. And obviously, when the uprisings happened in 2011, the work took more urgency, especially when it came to Syria. So I worked in journalism a lot, and I was, transparently, I was working with Al-Akhbar English, which was a very interesting experience for me as a young Syrian Canadian with different politics. And I found myself out of journalism, and that's how I found myself in the NGO sector. And the NGO sector, I also have to be honest, I hate NGOs. I find them very problematic, especially NGOs. And we touched that. There was a question last session about the NGOization of resistance, and I can confirm this is very true. NGOs or INGOs, by their very definition and how they were formed and how they were funded and how they're structured, isn't really revolutionary or radical. Most often than not, they hollow out radical politics, or they're very afraid of it. And this is very true, and I understand why. Because of who's funding them, how it was created, where it was created, what are the needs, and so forth. So you have this complete disconnect about what is the actual needs and solutions on the ground to what can be provided. So I'm also a huge comic fanatic, and for the past year and a half, I started going into writing comics. I think I'm a rare breed in this room, if not this region, in the sense of I don't draw. I am only a script writer. Everyone else around me writes and draws or just draws. And I wish I could draw. It would help a lot. It would lessen the costs of therapy, I think. But I started writing comics. So to touch into what we did here, this is drawn by Ghadi Ghusn, who is my constant collaborator. And the idea, yeah, he's awesome. And so we were asked to do this one-page comic. So the idea that I thought about was a joke. Now, if you read it, it's a 5-panel story. It's a very lame joke, and I did that on purpose because I find the whole situation is very absurdist, like a bad joke. And this is actually based on a true story. One of the things I did in 2015 with a few people was that we went to the refugee camps in the Ba'a, and we were trying to see the possibility of refugees organizing themselves. Now, this is a project that was fraught with challenges, obviously, especially on the question of is organizing yourselves a political act? I don't shy away from answering, yes, it is, and it should be. Because the very nature of the problem is political, and there is no such thing as taking an apolitical stance, in my personal opinion. Because by taking an apolitical stance, you're by very nature taking a political stance. That's the irony here. So the idea, at least as when we saw, is that for the core issues for Syrian refugees, or most refugees, really touches on the idea of self-determination, right? It's about representation. With the Syrian case, if we're going to stick to that, Syrians as refugees and beyond do not truly have individuals or bodies that actually represents them. Neither the Syrian regime, clearly, because it's very totalitarian and dictatorial, nor the Syrian opposition, which is also very corrupt and serves its own personal interests. And I think this is very prevalent or very clear in Lebanon. For example, we know that the Syrian refugees exist. They are here. The Syrian embassy, supposedly the representative, does nothing. The only time they actually acted for Syrians was during the elections a couple of years ago. Remember, they started organizing everyone and everyone was happy. That's the only time the Syrian embassy actually did something or talked about Syrians in this country. Ironically, the Syrian National Coalition, supposedly supposed to represent the opposition, they actually have a refugees affairs representative here. I don't know this person's name. I've never seen this person on the news, and they don't really do anything. So it really comes down to the question of self-determination. Now, this is a true story, because when we were in this refugee camp and trying to organize, they told me this story about how this INGO came to the camp. And the biggest project they wanted to teach everyone, they were really like so excited about, was hygiene, which, okay, hygiene is important, but particularly the act of how to wash your hands. No, this is true story, and this actually happens a lot. So they wanted to go, a soap, and to show, the poor refugee, how do you wash your hands?
The biggest problem.
Yeah. So obviously, the refugee community are like, get the fuck out of here. Basically, they were very upset, and they, kicked them out because they're like, we need more than just how to wash our hands. And it just shows you the complete divide between what an INGO functions and what the needs are. And again, I will say that needs and solutions are political, like the question of self-determination, like the question of organizing, and so on and so forth, which is really the end of it all. So this is where we came up with this nice little joke in one page. If there's anything else I can continue to talk about, I mean, there's a lot to touch on in terms of
I will
behind
leave
the
it
story.
when we have the discussion. I can recall what Mir Al-Mir said in the previous talk, that the INGO are hiring most of the population of Lebanon. So that
No,
in a sense, it's becoming like شو بيقولوا؟ يعني they are doing good for the economy. They are hiring people more than they are taking care of the refugees. Anyway, so that's the side. So coming to Diala, okay, you were born in Kuwait as well. Co-citizen. Yes. You lived in Damascus. You decided to leave to Lebanon, from Lebanon to Paris.
Yeah.
Then you had residencies in Germany. You came from Barcelona or Lisbona here?
Lisbona,
And
Lisbon.
Okay, Lisbona to Beirut, and then I don't know where you are going. So
Yeah.
mainly, okay.
I'm totally lost, actually.
Yeah,
I
you
don't
are
know
totally
where to
lost,
live
but at the
still.
same time, you are finding a lot of legal difficulties,
Yeah.
either in Lebanon or in your stay in France, or when you have a residency here and there, etc., and so on. And what struck me mainly is the title of your thing is "Home is where one starts from." So where is your home?
So it's so
Yeah,
hard
it's,
question. Like, I'm still searching for it, actually. Like, what I'm trying to do is finding this home, like building memories all over again, because like when I left Syria, I didn't know that I'm leaving forever, for good. I don't know. I didn't take my precious things, like they are mostly memories and childhood photos and things. So now I feel like I wanna print every photo. I wanna collect every memory. I keep everything, which is really bad because it keeps you heavier, and I'm still moving, and it's not a good idea to be heavy. But you know, when you are emotional in something, like you can't be practical. So I'm still trying to find this home. Like I don't know, I can't find it.
Yeah, but at least your home in your head doesn't have legal problem or
Like, to be honest, if I want to talk about a specific place, I feel home mostly in Berlin. But
okay, where everybody's going, unfortunately.
yeah, but because like of this paperwork and things, so I can't really take a decision like that easily. But I'm working on it, and I'm trying to be patient. And just because we moved a lot, and my father really liked to move in general from place to another, so that drives me crazy. And I feel like I was searching for home since a long time, even before 2011. Yeah.
Okay, and Yazan, your home is?
That's a very good question. I'm still, like you, searching. I'm kind of envious of the person. I know a few people here in Lebanon who were born here and stayed here most. So there's a bit of envy about that, because they can say, this is my village, you know, this is where I come from, and they go back, you know, every weekend. I don't really have that. يعني أهلي بالكويت, and my extended family بسوريا. وأنا عشت بسوريا, كندا, الكويت, قبرص, إنجلترا, Lebanon, and
Okay.
I'm a foreigner in Lebanon. I'm still trying to figure things out.
Okay. Where is your home?
C'est une question difficile quand même.
Eh ben, ما الحق عليها هي حطتها بعنوانها. So I tried to end it with
Moi, je croyais que je suis une sorte de citoyen du monde. Et en fait, plus je vis en France, plus je ressens que je suis coréen. Parce que là, il y a beaucoup de trucs qui me fait penser qu'il y a dans la société, même dans la société française assez ouverte, il y a des administrations et tout ça qui me fait me rendre compte que je suis coréen. Parce que même si je voudrais agir comme citoyen du monde, c'est dans un pays étranger, c'est quand même assez difficile.
Okay, Pak considers himself an international universal citizen, but the more he lives in France, the more he feels that he's Korean, simply because the administrative work, etc., and so on, when he wants to deal with these issues, that's how they deal with him, right? No, in a sense. So, but your home is still the...
Yes. Je vis en France. Je vis en France, mais tous les trucs administratifs, tout ça, qui me fait me rendre compte que je suis coréen, et puis je dois constamment poser la question, comprendre le monde en tant que coréen, et tout ça, c'est ça. Ouais.
Okay, so we move to Nour, finally. Hifaoui.
I don't think I really care about home, since, again, I was raised here and I never felt like that this is home, since I couldn't make any legal stuff because I don't have anything here. And I can't say that Palestine is my home because I've never been there, I've never lived there. So how can I call it home also? And I really don't care about home. It's just about people, and I think that's it. And just if I can add just a few things, Rawand before said that she's talking about her struggles in life, and I think that's what we're all doing in comics and art and everything. We're just trying to express the problems we're living, whether in Arabic, whether in English, whether in French. For example, Tracy Shahwan obviously can't at all write in Arabic, but I think she can really describes and demonstrates a lot of Lebanese problems without really talking in Arabic or speaking or writing in Arabic. And I think it's the same for everyone. It doesn't really matter the language anymore in Lebanon, especially in Lebanon, since no one really talks Arabic all the time. You know, if you sit in a cafe, you'll also you'll hear the three languages all the time talk at the same time. Again, sorry. But I think we're all talking about our problems, our daily problems, and that's I think our problems, that you can't really go out from our problems. Even if you go out on fictional stories, we're also trying to express ourselves, I think.
Okay, thank you, all of you. Any questions?
My question is for Rawand and for Yazan, because both of you were journalists before, and I'm very journalists, and I'm very curious how reporting has influenced your artistic expression, the way you tell stories. Especially Rawand, I was very taken by this idea that these stories are connected to you. They're you said about your friends or experience around you. So I was just curious how reporting, journalism, having that past as a reporter, how that has influenced your work, both of your works.
It's actually the other way around. It's more of reading fiction and writing that influenced my journalism. So, because I never studied journalism, and I went in and I didn't really take myself seriously as a journalist. I just wanted to do interesting stories based on facts. And they were very odd stories that I would write. And from there, I mean, this is why I really like nonfiction comics. And I'm very much influenced by the likes of Joe Sacco. For example, he is the god of comic journalism. And I think what I noticed with Joe Sacco, and I've met him in person, sat down with him, and he's a very fine fellow that's a great drunk, is that he was very honest. He said it's not about, you know, trying to fit into this idea of journalism that is objectivity, because there is no such thing. It's just about presenting the truth, your experiences, as honestly as possible. And that's how I brought my, that's how I did my writing, literary journalism, and that's how I continued with the comic scripts I would write that are nonfiction. Where I'm just very honest. I put myself in the story. I show my biasness. I share the emotions I have, because I feel like there's an opportunity here to really connect with the reader and to show the topics, whatever they are, through the paradigm that I'm experiencing them. And I always admit that I could be wrong. I don't think I'm infallible, right? So whatever I write down could be just a complete bag of air. But that's the type of writing I like to do. That's raw. So it's actually, journalism really, the only thing that journalism gave me was a platform. But it didn't really affect my writing, I would say. Just to jump on that, I agree with Rawand here, and I take the position as the writer in the collaboration of comic, where there's a writer and an artist. So I agree with Rawand here. Language you use, or the text that is in a comic page, is highly important. I feel like sometimes that is forgotten, at least in this young industry we're trying to build here in the region, where how the caption is done and the way you're presenting the word, in what language, and which dialect, it matters. It really matters for the story, for the politics of the story and the context. So to simply, and even when you don't use text, right, that is a decision. It's an artistic decision, it's an emotional decision, it's a logical decision. So I feel like we should take texts a bit seriously in the comic format, and we're forgetting that for the art. And this happens a lot, whether in the recognition of how we talk about comic work. يعني في an award ceremony, which is very important, but there is no category for writer. right? And I think,
That's because there's so many categories for writers and literary journal thing.
but no one takes the comic writer seriously, and they should.
We'll add that category.
Okay. First of all, sorry, Rawand, if I called you activist, because activism, no, activism for me is not the term that is really used here. It's someone who acts to change something, to change a system, or to change what is wrong. So here they put it under NGO, etc., and so on. So I'm sorry, because here everything is limited to our little minds. So thank you all for coming, and I hope you enjoyed the talk. Thank you.
So much. Thank you, everybody, for joining us today. We hope to see you Monday for the opening of the exhibition at Beit Beirut. Thank you for being here, and for all our guests and our visitors from abroad and from Lebanon and the artists. Thank you.